Welcome to Come to the Brink. I'm Zoe Flowers, and this is a space for those of us navigating profound life changes like loss, trauma, caregiving, and transformation. It's about what happens when everything you thought was solid crumbles beneath you and you're forced to rebuild. If you've ever felt like you're standing on the brink, this is the space for you. Welcome.
Demeter herself no longer bathed. Her robes were mud drenched, her hair hung in dreadlocks. Even though the pain in her heart was staggering, she would not surrender. After many askings, pleadings, and episodes, all leading to nothing, she finally slumped down at the side of a well in a village where she was unknown. And as she leaned her aching body against the cool stone of the well, along came a woman, or rather a sort of woman. And this woman danced up to Demeter, wiggling her hips in a way suggesting sexual intercourse, and shaking her breasts in her little dance. And when Demeter saw her, she could not help but smile just a little. The dancing female was very magical indeed, for she had no head whatsoever, and her nipples were her eyes, and her vulva was her mouth. It was through this lovely mouth that she began to regale Demeter with some nice, juicy jokes. Demeter began to smile, and then chuckled, and then gave a full belly laugh. And together the two women laughed, the little belly goddess Baobo and the powerful mother earth goddess Demeter. And it was just this laughing that drew Demeter out of her depression and gave her energy to continue her search for her daughter, which, with the help of Bobo and the crone Hecate and the sun Helios, was ultimately successful. Persephone was restored to her mother. The world, the land, and the bellies of the women thrived again. And so, as usual, we are reading from Women Who Run with the Wolves, Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. And the author, of course, is Clarissa Pinkola Estes, PhD. And wow, what a wonderful, wonderful opening to my conversation today with Beki Crowell. And so, welcome back. This is Come to the Brink with Zoe Flowers. And as you know, this is the place where we come to talk about grief and restoration. And I mean, wow, Beki, that's just like it's just such a perfect lead in to what we're going to talk about today. So, Beki is a soul artist, a vibrational healer, and someone who has touched the sacred through surrender. I mean, just like in her story. Through her healing work with the Akashic Records, Reiki, light language, and her soul-led paintings, Beki guides others to reconnect with the divine self. This conversation is about what happens when we encounter something so vast, so loving, so divine, that it rearranges ourselves. It's about unconditional love, the divine kind, the kind that hold no requirements, the kind you remember, not learn. And it's also about grief, not just as something that we survive, but something that opens a portal, something that teaches, something that, in Beki's words, brings us back to what is eternal. So wherever you are, I invite you to listen with your heart, breathe, get something to drink. As always, you know we like to stay hydrated over here, and join us. So Beki, welcome to Come to the Brink. How are you doing?
Thank you, Zoe. I just love that intro. It was beautiful. Thank you. Yes. Beautiful to
Yeah,
be here with you. You are
yeah.
like a blooming flower.
Finally, I'm living up to my name.
Yeah.
So, let's start here with this conversation about awakening and being spontaneous. What would you want to say about that today?
Well, I would say that awakening is a spontaneous journey. It's
Mm,
something that is emergent that you can't force or plan. It's a part of being human. It's a part of the healing journey. When we enter into, in my opinion, when we enter into healing those parts of ourselves that feel um, exiled or unacceptable or uncomfortable, then we have access to the awakening journey, awakening to the
Mhm.
true self. And spontaneity is, it's like this emergent frequency that just it drops in, and we're guided. Think about we think about the contractions in life, the things that may cause us grief, and those are portals to open us to give birth to a new awareness, a new awakened aspect of the self. And so I was saying to Zoe before we began that I really wanted to clear my mind and open to whatever was most emergent in the moment. What is being called to be spoken through me,
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
whoever is listening in
Mhm.
the eternal moment of now, where there is no time, there is no linear time. And so, whomever is listening now, that this will reach that kind of timeless portal of what that person may be calling forth from this part of their soul. I believe that we're all a part of each other and that we're one with all, and that I am a part of you and you are a part of me, and we just bring in these other juicy aspects of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you brought up time because so much of our lives are regulated through time and sort of roles, right? And you should have this by this time. You should have that by this age. Um, what do you think it means to strive to live outside of time as the way we understand it? Because we know that time is like
Mhm.
a construct and it's not linear.
Mhm.
What do you think it takes to live that kind of life or to strive to live that type of life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's, it's, well, one, it's liberation to live outside
Mm,
of time,
mm,
because now you're not trapped in the story of linear time that I've got to, you know, be in a particular point in my life in order to feel like I've made it or I'm worthy or I'm okay where I am. And that is a form of bondage. And so I think when we step outside of that idea of time, then we start having access to the infinite realm of possibility, that quantum field of the
mhm.
timeless, where the wisdom, the knowing, the guidance kind of can drop in a more organic way. How do we do that? I think first just having the idea that there's something more than linear time. So I feel like we're in this vortex of possibility for humanity right now, where we're beginning to explore timelessness and the quantum field. So even our sciences are beginning to say,
Yeah.
wait a minute, there's more to this than linear time, which is more of the feminine, like this reading that you offered this morning, or this first to open up the reading of this feminine quality of that feels to me like the timelessness,
Yeah.
that the womb is timeless, to the
Yeah.
baby that is in it there is this timelessness. I think it's just beginning to open up to that possibility and see where it leads us.
Yeah. Was this a journey that you were always on, this
Mm.
conversation that we're in, or did you have, like, a moment where you just decided to, like, go down the spiritual path? I don't think we've really about, like, your actual origin story.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote a book called Bare Beauty, and in that book, it speaks of my awakenings throughout my life.
Yeah.
It's Bare Beauty, my journey of awakening. And I think the very first memory that I have, I was still crawling, and the reason I know is because I'm like looking at the towering legs to the dining room table, kind of, my vantage point was that I was on the ground. And I remember thinking, would all of this that I'm seeing and experiencing in the world around me, would this be here if I wasn't here? And maybe all non-speaking infant, toddler people are thinking this way. I don't know, but I remember
Wow.
like having that kind of profound thought at that stage of my life. So there's was always a question of this idea of the I guess the metaphysical, what is real, what isn't real? That was early on. And so, of course, life kind of keeps taking us through twists and turns. And then we have the contractions, like the things um, that are very uncomfortable and painful. In my book, I describe it at the contractions is the word that I use for those labors in life because it feels purposeful. It feels
Mm.
um, like when you're in labor with having a baby, we know that there is something on the other side of this that is meant to be something that we are calling forth, something that we desire. And so that's the approach that I take to the labors of my life that have given birth to these next awakenings. So I think it's this, undulating peristalsis contracting journey into awakening and it just keeps getting more and more expansive as as we grow in our human experience.
Yeah. Do
Mhm.
you feel like with that sort of early memory of like, wow, um, it just makes me think like the knowledge and wisdom that you came with to have like be thinking those thoughts and to be able to recall
Mhm.
them as well. It very much feels like a time traveler. I wonder if you feel like a time traveler sometimes. That's a question.
Mm. Yeah.
Rhetorical.
Yeah, hmm, I think now, like, in my most current book that I just, gave birth to in 2024, I feel like I'm a time traveler in that book because
Mm,
I am literally connecting to this parallel self in another dimension. So I'm
mm,
connecting to the aspect of me that is living in another time and space, which feels more like a what we might consider a more utopian society. And so when I'm tuning into her, I'm definitely experiencing like I'm in another time. I am in
yeah,
another time and I'm
yeah.
embodied as her in another time. So it's a way of
Mhm,
thinking,
mhm,
and
yeah.
in the book, I describe when she comes to me, um, in this time, Becky in this time, her name is Shahalaku, and she comes to me to support me in my awakening journey. And it
Mm,
happens when I am um, having an awakening, one of my most powerful awakenings, which is I call it my eagle experience. And I'm walking in this beautiful park, not too far from where I live, one of my favorite places. And I'm the entire walk, I'm just distraught. Life is really hard. I'm crying the entire way around this park. And at the end of my walk, I come to the dock where I can kind of walk out on an expanse of marsh. And in that moment, I just look up to the sky and put my hands up and I'm like, please give me a sign. And in that moment, a bald eagle flies and swishes over my head and lands on a lamppost in front of me.
mm,
And I'm just kind of don't know if I've ever seen a bald eagle in the wild before, and I'm in awe, and I'm looking around to see if there's anyone else looking, and there's
yeah,
nobody else there, and I knew this was my sign. I'm like, "This is my sign."
yeah, yeah.
And something shifted in me, like, pretty quickly, I started feeling this this weight lift from my being, and I started having access to something different. Now, in my book Threading of the Soul with Shahalaku, this in this moment, and I didn't know this until I wrote this book. This is the weaving of time, the
Yeah.
multidimensionality of things. But this is when Shahalaku, from her perspective, entered into my body. She merged with my body. And so these two parts of my soul became one. And I had access to an awakened awareness that she held, the way she perceived the world from a place of oneness consciousness, where everything was shimmering with interconnectedness, the environment around me, the air, the bald eagle, a sense of freedom and power, um, empowerment, like that, the way a bald eagle embodies that sense of freedom and empower to me. And I was able to begin to see from that broader perspective that Shahalaku holds, that
Mm,
she anchors in her being a perspective of wholeness and creation.
mm,
And this is the energy, the transmission that I bring in that book is to transmit that frequency that she carries. And she brought it to me in that day. And I write about this. Um, the book itself is like a channeling, it's like emergent. And the awareness came to me as I was writing. And it filled in this piece of understanding that I experienced so many years ago when the eagle came to me. And my life um, really has never been the same since then. I was able to hold that state of awakened awareness, of connection to all that is, of unconditional love, being completely aligned to the frequency of love, regardless of the conditions that were happening, because there was a lot of kind of uncomfortable and unacceptable conditions happening in my life at the time.
mhm,
And I was able to interface those conditions from this place of complete peace, trust, knowing, love, like everything was at its very core beautiful to me. I could see the beauty in all of it. And so that that was like time travel. You know, it was
mhm.
literally time travel for Shahalaku because she was awakened to the intention. Me in that time had no idea that was exactly what was happening, but I felt the shift of consciousness. And isn't that in a way shifting time when we can shift our
Yeah.
consciousness so profoundly that we are living from a different place?
Yeah, living into the future, living into the highest form of ourselves. I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
it is a fascinating experience, and especially to have the name of you in
Mhm.
another dimension that you're bringing
Yeah.
into this dimension. So, you talked about being able to hold that frequency. Um, we know we've had these experiences where we have these great awakenings and where we're able to hold a frequency, but then other old stories creep in. What do you do? What's your practice to like return to that frequency?
I love that. That you asked that because when the about a week kind of when I started kind of moving back into ordinary consciousness,
Mhm.
what was interesting to me is I felt okay about it because I knew that I
Mm.
had gotten this incredible taste of what's possible for all of us. And
Mhm.
it was like I was able to say, okay, I know what it feels like. It's so tangible, it's so palpable to me what this kind
Mhm.
of freedom feels like that now I am being called to like the mat, so to speak, or chop wood, carry water. It was like, what is the human process? What is the process that can help me to continue to anchor into that place of freedom? So it really became a practice for me from that point on. I called the practice unconditional love. It's like
Yes.
aligning to love. This is the way I define unconditional love. Aligning to the frequency of divine love with a capital L,
Mhm.
regardless of the conditions, regardless of the fact that my child is happy, safe, whole, free, like all of those things. Well, in truth, my child is all of those things, right? In the
Mhm.
timeless dimension. But I might be thinking from my little Becky self, I'll be looking at my child and thinking, these things are not happening. And I get derailed from my alignment to love. So I go
Yeah.
into worry, I go into fear, I go into control, I go into how can I fix this? How can I fix
Yeah.
this problem? So I often think unconditional love, we always thought that the parents or mothers specifically, that it's the easiest for us to be unconditionally loving to our children. But in truth, it is because we desire the conditions to be just a particular kind of way that we are pulled out of unconditional love with those that
Mhm.
we love the most.
Mhm.
And so the practice is stronger with those that we really care about, because can I still be aligned to love when my child is sick? Can I
Mhm.
stay out of worry and fear and just let love lead me in that practice? It's more than a notion, and it's a practice, and
Yeah.
for me, it takes the intention and the knowing that it's, what that is, instead of, um, mothers often are very sacrificial, and we think
Mhm.
that's unconditional love. That's not unconditional love.
Mhm.
Sacrifice is not unconditional love. Sacrifice is often leaving ourselves out, you know, to our own detriment in order to care for another. And then we are empty and we really have less and less to give. So I'll have all these dysfunctional relationships going on because we're resentful or drained. And, um, I don't even know how I got on that tangent, but I think,
Yeah. No, it's actually a perfect lead in because as you're
Mhm,
talking about what sacrifice is, and that is the expectation of, women identified people. I mean,
mhm,
that is that is applauded. That is the blueprint.
yes.
Um, and so just like living outside of time as we think about grief, I wonder if you want to talk about like stepping away from this model of motherhood, like
Hmm.
stepping away from these roles.
Hmm.
Is there a grief in it?
Yeah. I think when we release an old identity that we became familiar with and comfortable with, that there is, in a sense, a death of the self, that part of the self.
Mhm.
And my feeling is that we're in a consistent, that process of dying to the old is happening moment by moment in order to be fully present in the present moment, that we have to let go, mm, of that identification. It doesn't mean that it isn't still integrated part of us. It's part of
Yeah.
the journey,
Yeah.
but there is this sense of, yeah, like the sacrifice piece, I spent a lot of time in chronic worry. It's how I became um an energy healer, because I started working with Bach flower essences as a way to heal my own chronic worry. I'd wake up with panic attacks, even when there was no conditions left for me to be worried about in that
What's
moment.
before motherhood or after?
I think it really crescendoed when gave birth to my first son.
I
It's like
see.
it just became really focused on him.
Mhm.
But once I started healing through my work with the flower essences, which is, for those who don't know, the flower essence is a vibrational medicine. You take it internally. You can blend different remedies together, and each remedy carries a particular quality to align you to your soul, to align you to your true self, to bring you into that remembered space. And it can be anywhere from worrying about loved ones to different forms of anxiety and fears to becoming more decisive about what your life purpose is, or being more focused when you're kind of having a hard time being focused. There's all different flower essences for these things. And for me, I began the journey with red chestnut, which was for worrying about loved ones. And it's great for the codependent personality. And definitely a mother flower, because a lot of mothers are worriers, but a lot of women are, but not everybody. This is each one is all of us are very unique. But when I started taking that, I realized that I had been worried about everybody before I had kids. It was just a lower level stress, right? The way that I would worry about people was, I need to take care of you so I will feel safe.
Mhm.
And that it was taking care of you emotionally. I knew I couldn't, necessarily take care of people in the grand way of food and
Yeah.
shelter when I was a little kid. But I would
Yeah.
be like, if I can manage everybody's emotional state of being, it was a
Mm,
hypervigilance, then I would be safe. And so that when I started doing the healing work from the perspective of becoming a mother and really entering into the legacy of sacrifice,
mm,
of woman sacrifice and mother sacrifice, like I could feel that legacy kind of come down. And it's generational, it's ancestral, it's our society, it's probably many societies.
100%.
And once I started to really feel that, that grip loosen from me, I was able to begin to heal the other layers of that type of worry and codependency.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking about how you started off the conversation talking about as a baby, you're looking around being like, would this
Mhm.
exist without me?
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of like makes us think about like your which I'm sure you've done past life work to know like what your other lives
Yeah.
were like, but it's like that's a heck of a thought for a baby. Like
I
it's just
know.
a
And it's even like,
responsibility.
and is it even, it's kind of like, it's the idea of that, if a tree falls in the forest,
Yeah.
will will it make a sound?
Yes.
And if there's nobody there to listen to it, to hear it.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
kind of like a koan. There's these it's a riddle in a way. I don't
yeah.
even know if I can fully answer that question.
Yeah.
It's a contemplation in and of itself.
Well, it gets kind of quantum physics-y, right? Like the
Yeah.
role of the observer, like if we want to go there, like
Mhm.
once you take your attention off of something, then it doesn't really exist. So it's kind of
Mhm.
like, yeah, that time traveler coming in, like that high
Yeah,
level,
yeah.
maybe Becky
Yeah.
coming in with this, like quantum physics
Yeah, it is
question.
like quantum physics.
It
It's
is.
like,
It's literally
yeah.
like the observer conversation.
Mhm.
I love that. So these little deaths, these that are necessary. Here's a question I have for you as we're talking about this, because so much of this has to do with the choices that we've made and the sort of, I don't know, the things that are put in place to allow us to ponder these conversations and have these kind of make these kinds of choices. Do you think that there are certain are there a specific set of circumstances that need to be in place for a person to feel like they can have the kind of spiritual awakening you had, that they can sort of not completely shake off the role of motherhood? I mean, I mean, I imagine you could never do that, but you've certainly been able to shed certain things. Do you think there are things that have to be in place to get there? Because I'm thinking about the person who may be listening to be like, oh, well, that's great for you, Zoe. You don't have any kids. Oh, that's great for you, Becky. You came into clearly you're special. What would you say that person that's thinking that this is not accessible to them?
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. Um, well, the first thing I would say is that every human is on a soul's journey, and
Yeah.
that exactly what's happening in your life right here and now is perfect. That there is we are eternal beings, and there is no end to this journey. And so part of it's surrendering to I am exactly where I need to be right here and now and not be pushing and trying to figure it out.
So,
And then allowing the messages, the crumbs along the way that show you something that you feel like compelled towards, to follow it, to say yes to those things that you feel resonance to, because there's not one way. Like for me, sitting meditation is really profound and powerful. It hasn't been always, but when
yeah,
I meditate, I can go into this field of no time, no space, and begin
yeah,
to access this quantum realm to connect to my guides. And everybody has access to that if they desire it. Not everybody wants to do that. So
true.
what way, so the question I would ask, if if someone was sitting in front of me asking me that question, I would ask, well, what makes you excited? What do you resonate with? When does your heart soar? Um, is it when you're walking in nature? Almost everybody can vouch for nature, but not everybody, right? It's
Yeah,
not for everybody.
yeah,
It might be when you're soaking in a bath and, something about that water and that state that kind of helps you to move beyond your critical mind. And there's, you know, hundreds of tools out there to bring us into connection with our soul, but we
sure.
can't not really be in connection. It's really more like conscious connection with the soul. We are connected. We are the soul.
Yeah,
So first of all, I mean, I imagine that anyone who's listening to your podcast is interested in some way in this idea of awakening or opening to a greater aspect of self, of the divine. And so that desire and that interest is what guides you. And
yeah,
I love the idea of like following your highest excitement, um,
absolutely.
and letting that be your guide, like just like really letting that uh, guide you, because and doing your best to keep softening the mind from being the saboteur of that movement towards excitement.
Mhm.
I found for myself the flower essences being a really gentle and yet potent kind of way, like a medicine for me. It doesn't alter your, it's not psychoactive. It doesn't alter your mind in that way, but it shifts the patterns, cover up the natural self, that aligned self that's aligned to love. And
Mm,
so the flower essences, there's many different kinds. The Bach flower is kind of a classic kind. You can get it at a health food store. You don't have to have a practitioner. I am a practitioner, but I can be a guide for people. So, I consider myself similar to a soul midwife. Like I'm helping you
right.
to realign to your soul so that your healing can occur within. The healing
Sure.
journey itself is a powerful
Yeah,
process. Like, so if you're feeling like you need to heal something, whether it's physical or emotional or psychological, it's like that journey often becomes the the thread that pulls you towards another state of consciousness that brings you into more joy and freedom and peace and inner wisdom and knowing and trust, all of those things. Does that feel like I've answered the question, or do you
yeah,
want to?
yeah, and it's just led to another question
Mm-hmm.
around sort of grief as that thread as well.
Mm,
Because some of us get to the awakening through meditation and all these things, but
mhm.
some of us get there from like grief bringing us to our knees. So I wonder if you could
Yeah.
talk about grief as a portal or how you view grief.
Well, that just as you say that, I get like goosebumps all over my body,
Mm,
and the way that you asked that question, or stated that idea of the portal again, is, going back to motherhood. when I gave birth to my first child in particular, because that was when I went from the maiden to the mother, right? Like that's when I let go of I had to let go of the old self. Not that she, again, it wasn't integrated and a part of me, but I was no longer who I was
Mm,
when I became a mother. And I I mourned that self. I mourned my freedom to just be able to get up and go whenever I wanted, to paint. Um, I'm an artist too, and I painted a lot, and I could not get time to paint. I felt completely consumed by
yeah.
this beautiful,
Mm,
amazing, magical little being
mm,
that was like at the same time sucking the life out of me. It's
mm.
like literally, I was, it was constant nursing and all. It was all such a shock to me.
Wow.
And I so it wasn't like I consciously knew exactly what was happening. I couldn't have
Yeah.
been prepared. And I did experience postpartum depression. I'm on the range of that. And at that time, 32 years ago, there wasn't any books. Like it was really hard to kind of find information about that. And so I was in a hormonal hurricane and I didn't understand what was happening. So I was in a lot of grief, but I was also it was such a paradox because I was also meeting this soul that was going to be a part of my life forever and a very much a catalyst of my awakening. Very much like that portal that my own womb was to bring forth this child. And it also gave, it's like the womb of the universe was birthing me into a new phase of my awakening.
Mm,
It's incredibly powerful to experience roles that are not always comfortable.
yeah.
Even when we choose them,
Yeah.
they can be incredibly uncomfortable. And that discomfort is definitely a contraction that opens us up. So
Yes.
yeah, I think there's also a way for us to experience these awakenings without the contraction, without
Mhm.
pain and labor. Like
Yes.
that is a potential, and I think we're moving into a time where there will be more of that, but in the meantime, we're in a collective contraction as
Yeah.
we are, moving from one dimension of consciousness to another collectively. We've talked about that some, if we for those who are aware of the idea of the third dimension, and then we're moving through the fourth into the fifth dimension. And that's not a conversation we need to go into deeply because there's a lot of people who can speak on that much more um, with more wisdom than I, but I can feel it. I can
Mm,
feel like I'm in that labor, in that threshold, in that portal right now. And it's requiring for me a lot of releasing of old stories of how things should be or how I should be, and to allow myself to be really present with what's showing up, what's in front of me, to address what's right here and now instead of trying to go into the future and into the past, the fear future, the pain past, kind of like that dynamic, and just
yeah.
staying present. How are you feeling about this transition? If it's okay for me to ask you, like,
Oh, yeah,
how
of
is that
course.
affecting you right now?
Mhm. Um, well, hmm. So you mean the collective transition that
The
we're in?
collective and how it's because I think it's collective, but it's also intimately personal,
Yeah.
uniquely personal.
Well, when you were talking about sort of the portal of life that you brought through the womb and how that took you to becoming another person, I feel like on the opposite spectrum, when my mom died, that
Yeah. Yeah.
elevated me to another level because I had to become different in order to be with her, like literally in her final months, her final day, her final hour, her final 15 minutes, right? I was there for all of it. So there were parts of me that had to die. Like you know me. I mean, artist living in Brooklyn, very full life, nobody to really answer to. But there was a lot of emotional weight that came even before my mom got sick. So there was a lot that I had been carrying. And then that just got amplified all those years that I was living with her. And then again, doulaing her through her death journey. So, so when she died, it was like, well, what do I do now? What do my days look like? Because I wasn't working, because I mean, I was working here and there, but I couldn't really work because I was like giving my attention. So for the first time in my life, as somebody who didn't want children, now I'm in a caretaking role. Now I'm doing all the
Yeah.
things I never wanted to do. I'm living in a place I never wanted to live. So I was just constantly like angry. And so by the time she passed, I literally was like, well, the things that I had joy in, I don't have joy anymore. My work, I was like, what am I going to talk about with people? Is there
Wow.
a role for me? Because now I'm
Mm.
much older than I was when I started taking care of her at the beginning. So there were several sort of um parts of myself that I really felt like were ripped away from me against my will. And I literally was
Yeah.
kicking and screaming the whole fucking I was pissed. Like the day my mom died, the last thing that I said to her was, I'm sorry I was being a spoiled brat, like the whole time. And it was the honor of my life. And I kissed her on her forehead. She literally took 6 breaths and was like, I'm out of here. Like, bitch, that's all I was waiting for you to say.
You are crazy.
I did though. I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like a brat the whole time, but I was so angry. Like I really felt
Mm.
wrong. So then yeah, so she took off and then I started to see it as an ascension for myself. Like, oh, I'm going to another level. Like I'm ascending. And I was just like getting into that groove, mourning her, mourning my anger also at my family that didn't really show up at all. Um, and then I started to feel better. And then the election happened. And then that took me quite low. Um, so then I realized like I can't stay in the States because I've already been trying to heal in a place that I was harmed. Now there's this other sort of collective anger, grief, mistrust, fear that I just don't have the capacity to deal with.
Right. Right.
So my response is I packed up my little Mini Cooper and my cat, as you know, and I left the country
Yeah.
because I just could not stay there in that house, in that country, dealing with the weight. It just was too much. It
Yeah.
too much. So I came to Canada in January in the winter time to the Great White North. Oh, it snowed 3 times a day all through the night. And I just sat in here and cried like every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And just realized how exhausted I've been for so long.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's my response. Like,
Yeah.
my response to that question is I left the place of harm so that I could heal and sleep and feel safe walking down the street. Real or imagined fear. I mean, most of
Right.
semi-subconscious, right? I really wasn't in any danger.
Yeah.
But I had to leave the situation.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I had to get out
And
of
so
Dodge.
how would you say that has been a part of your ascension or your
Yeah,
upgrade? Because you mentioned that.
yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great because the first thing is, so when she first passed, I couldn't set up her altar, like I couldn't really do that. But when I set up the altar in the Connecticut our house, the ancestors immediately started speaking and they just were
Mhm.
coming. like so many apologies. Like, we're so sorry we couldn't see you when you were living. We couldn't see you for who you really were. It was just like
Mm,
every day I would sit with them and it was like, that was phenomenal. Um,
mhm,
so then when I came here, it's funny, and I've thought about this a lot. This experience is kind of mirroring when I left Connecticut after an abusive relationship and moved to Atlanta and my whole life started again. That's what's
mhm.
happening here. So astrologically, there's some astrological things. So this is like a repeat of that, but better because I
Yeah,
have tools that I didn't have when I was 24,
yeah, yeah.
right? And in 2020, in 20 well, when I was 24, I was running to Atlanta.
Right,
Here, I made a choice going towards something better.
right.
So
So
there's
that's it.
more
And
empowerment.
mhm.
I'm
And
more
that's to me the
empowered.
example. That's an example of the healing journey,
Yes. Yeah.
the healing journey as the journey of awakening. Like it's,
Yes.
so you're in that process. So the grief or the transition period that you were in with your
Yeah.
mother, the caretaking and all the feelings that come up around that,
Yeah.
and the grief of what you had to let go of in order to do that. And then
Yeah.
when she left, there was another letting go, right?
Yeah.
Of the identity that you had kind of assumed in order to be
Yeah.
your caretaker. So we're in this constant state.
Yeah.
It's we can't not be in that journey.
Yeah.
Even if we're not aware of it, even if we don't have the tools, even if we don't have, we're not consciously aware of it. We are in it no matter what.
We're in
And
it no matter what.
sometimes there's these little angels that come along that are, that you don't have to pay for. They're not some kind of practitioner. They're just like somebody in a coffee shop or
Yeah.
a song that you're hearing or a
Yeah.
movie that you watched. Right? There's so many different ways in which we are being supported from the non-physical realm to support us in this process of awakening. And then collectively there is this ascension process happening, and it's pretty intense right now. There's a lot of chaos out there,
Mhm.
so it requires us
Mhm.
to be really aligned to what it is that holds us in that center place. For me, it's love. That's the way that I describe it, is unconditional love. So as I practice that that practice of unconditional love, as the chaos whirls around, I intend to hold myself like I'm in the eye of the storm. I'm
Yeah.
in that eye where it's completely peaceful. And it's a practice. Sometimes I slip in and hit the wall of the storm and I'll feel it. Um, but mostly it's getting easier and easier to do that, is
Yeah.
to hold that center and to trust the process when there is grief, when there is sadness, when there are feelings that need to be felt. Because if we don't feel them, they become stuck. They become, they become a problem. And
Yeah.
to me, grief is to be felt.
Yes, it's to be felt, and for me, it's always like saying yes to things.
Mhm.
What am I saying
Mm.
yes to? What am I saying no to? Because I could have had a million. I mean, there were a million things in my head of what I could do and this and that, and I just chose to say yes to this thing. And so,
Mhm.
so many things have opened up because I said yes. So I think that's the
Yeah.
full of part of it too, right? We have to actually say yes if
Yes.
something's gonna move. Because if we don't,
Mhm.
we might get moved in a way that we don't want to
Mhm.
be moved into. So it's kind of like we hear those voices for a
Mhm.
reason. And I feel like, as you're saying, like the more we're aligned, which also, I don't know if I said this before, but we have to slow down so we can sort of discern who's
Mhm.
speaking, who we're
Mhm.
hearing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's like, what am I willing to say yes to and what am I willing to say no to?
Yeah, and I love, like, your story where at 24, you were running to
Mhm.
from one location to another away
Yeah.
from a bad situation,
Yeah.
and this time you were moving towards. So it wasn't a
Yeah.
running, it's like
Yeah.
saying yes. The other one was kind of a no, and both of them were a yes to you. both are a yes to you, but the
Yeah,
no pre preceded the yes, right? Like the no had to come first. And that's,
that's right.
I don't know, it's like that seems to be when it can be more painful. Like we've been stubborn
At
and we're
first,
not
before.
listening to the thing that's
Yes.
saying, that says, this is what I want to go yet towards and towards.
Yeah.
And then when we keep not listening to that voice, then we get the big
Yes.
no. And the
Then we
no
gotta
is the big old
that's
contraction,
right. That's
you
right.
know.
If what I find the difference is that when you're running away from something, you meet the same experiences. So the 13 years that I was in Atlanta, it was
Mhm.
hard as anything. Some of it could have just been
Uh,
it was really hard, really painful, really bad in a lot of ways. Whereas this way, because I'm saying yes, it's like things are
mhm.
unfolding like beautiful,
Mhm.
like just
Mhm.
exactly what I'm asking for, I'm receiving.
Mm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's a huge difference.
Yeah, and that's evolution. That's growing. That's,
Yeah, that's
you know,
growing.
moving through this human experience. It can be pretty messy,
Yeah,
and gathering our tools along the way,
yeah,
and so that you can say yes and take that pause. Take the pause before taking action and really feeling into, what is my yes here?
yeah, yeah. So I have a
Mhm.
couple more questions before we wrap up. This has been so good. Like,
Okay.
we went by so fast.
Yeah.
Back on. So I'm wondering about because I've come to you, so I've had sessions, full disclosure, people with Becky, highly recommend. What are you listening for when people come to you?
Mm. When they sit in front of me and we begin? Well, somewhat like when we started this conversation, I have to get out of the way a little bit,
Mm,
like I need to
mhm,
kind of put myself aside. I work with the spirit guides of my client. So I go into their Akashic record, which is the kind of soul's record, ethereal or vibrational record in all time and space. And so I access their guides that give me information and insights and guidance to help that person on their journey, to come into alignment with themselves so they can heal, because healing
mhm,
happens from within. So I feel like when I sit, the way in which I tune in to the person in front of me is first to tune into their soul, to
mhm.
their divine guidance, to feel into that. And then I start receiving awareness of what's happening in their human
Right.
self, in their human body, in so if sometimes I'll start feeling sensations in my body, I'm very clairsentient. So it's a feeling, it's very physical for me, and it can be my emotional body or my physical body. So if someone's experiencing really intense grief, as we start going into the Akashic field, I'll start feeling kind of the sensation of emotional grief consume me, and then I get some awareness of how I can begin to uh, relate and connect to that person. They tell me their story. We don't have to go deeply into trauma if it's not necessary. It doesn't come up. Sometimes the guides will ask me to
Mm,
ask them questions to bring it up, because sometimes it's necessary for them to speak it.
mhm,
Other times it's not necessary. So it's very emergent. I use different modalities when I'm sitting with somebody. um, the Akashic Records is one of the most potent ways to have a more than a window. It's like, you can intuitively sense what somebody's going through. But once I go into the Akashic Records, I feel like I walk into the door and I have more access to the awareness of who they are at
mm,
all levels. And then I have the flowers to work with those things that come up that might help and support them when they walk away, and they have that to work with. They may get homework on things that they can do. It might be some form of meditation or breath work, like all kinds of things has been suggested. Um,
yeah.
and then I work with Reiki, which is the hands-on healing technique, which you know very well because you're a
Mhm,
Reiki master yourself and
yes,
teach it. And so I work with the Reiki energy. The guides will sometimes the guides will be the ancestors, and they'll bring in a different healing modality that I work with. And they guide me completely with that.
Okay.
So it's not like I'm an expert in that area. I just follow the guidance. So it's mostly a process of me surrendering enough of my own agenda, my own kind of mind, my physical mind, to open up to divine mind and receive the guidance and then use, the tools that I have. I also use light language, which is a newer
Mm.
modality that is emerged as Shahalaku emerged into my life. And she speaks that language. It's the language of the sacred breath of wholeness and creation. And so it's a transmission that anchors that frequency into into the person, in during the session. And if
Yeah.
that language comes in, I know sometimes they're taking me out of my mind,
Uh-huh.
my critical mind. They'll start using the language to kind of clear that out. And if I'm working with somebody who is really cerebral, the language is usually very present. It will come in and help kind of because then you
Yeah.
it's like, what do you do with this language? Light language is it's like a frequency, it's an energy, and it can come in all kinds of different forms. Some people speak light languages that have come from the Palladians and the Syrians and other star systems. For me, it's very earth. It's like the indigenous people of the earth. It can sound like um, Maori or Native American, uh, even Middle Eastern sounds are in there, but it sounds ancient, more of an ancient language. And so I feel like I'm like gathering up the frequencies from this more evolved but ancient indigenous peoples and bringing
Wow.
that in to that frequency. So all
Yeah.
of that is the way in which I sit with somebody. It's based on what they're calling in,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's different for each person. I never know. It's such a delicious journey to sit with somebody and
It is.
see how they are calling forth what they call forth through me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So how
it's
can
a
people
co-creation.
I want to talk offline about light language, but because I feel like that came up in one of our in the last reading that we did. I feel like that came up. But
Mhm.
so how can people get in touch with you? How can people support your work?
So my website is BekiArt.com, spelled BekiArt. So Becky is spelled Beki. So it's pretty simple. You can go there, and there's a link to my email. You can send me an email if you're interested. And in a soul session, it's what it's called. I also do soul portraits. So you'll see my artwork on the website. I create portraits that are um, I tap into your Akashic record and call in your soul, and I channel your soul on canvas. And this is an image that is used as part of your healing and awakening journey as a way to really align to the soul and for it to carry that frequency with you. I've done soul portraits where, 5 years later, the person wants another one to kind of feel where their soul wants to take them now through the image. So all of that's on my website. You can take a look at that, and I would love for you to reach out if you are inspired, if you feel a yes to this work. I'm here to serve in the best way that I can to help make this burden of or this journey, this adventure of being a human a little easier and more empowering, and to find the beauty in this journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you to come back on after, once your book is finished. So I just want to thank you again. And
Oh, the
so
book
I've
is finished.
oh, it is? Oh, well, how
The
can
book is
people get it on your
finished.
website?
The book is finished. It came out in September
Oh,
2024,
oh my
and
gosh.
you can get it on my website. There's a link
Okay.
to get it on my website. You can get it on
Great.
Amazon. Both
Okay.
books you can get
Okay.
there. So yeah, it's done.
Okay. I'll put it in the show notes.
Exciting.
Right. Yes,
Yeah,
very.
yeah. And it's always so wonderful to speak to you, Zoe. What
You
a
too.
dynamic, beautiful
Thank
being you
you.
are. And I love your color and your beauty and your
Thank you.
constant blooming of the
Thank you.
soul. Yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for helping me on that journey as well. So
you are
folks,
welcome.
I've started to give journal prompts to people, Becky, as part of the prep this week.
Ah.
As part of the podcast. We're giving homework. So,
Mhm.
so some of the questions that I have for folks to ponder is, what if grief isn't just the pain of what we've lost, but a reminder of what we've loved? And I feel like that came from the conversation, that first conversation you and I had before, this. What if
Yeah.
it's the soul's way of telling us that this mattered, that this changed me, and that this still lives in me? And what if the
Mm,
ultimate invitation isn't to run from it, but to surrender from it to it like Demeter did? Because
mm,
remember, in the piece, Demeter surrendered to laughter, and then she was able to pull her team together to bring Persephone out of the underworld. So, what if we can embody that Demeter energy? So, that might be something to think about, to journal about, is to, yeah, what would it take for you to surrender and not to run from grief? So, if this conversation stirred anything in you, if you've had a moment of opening or sitting in a tender space of grief, I would want to definitely hear from you. So, you can DM me at I am Zoe Flowers on Instagram, or reach out to me via email, info@iamzoeflowers.com. Leave a comment, share a voice note, let us know what came up for you, because your story belongs here too. So next week, I'm going to have another expansive conversation with another time traveler, Kaylin Castell, whose visionary insights remind us that we inform the mysteries as much as they inform us. So we're going to tap into cosmic wisdom and how grief connects us all in unseen ways. As a reminder, Come to the Brink drops every Tuesday at 7:11 in the morning. The bonus episodes drop on Fridays, or pretty much when I feel like dropping them. And you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you go to find your depth, your truth, and your healing. So yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. And remember, no one should stand on the brink alone. Beki Crowell, thank you again.
thank you. Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
Thank you. I'm Zoe Flowers, and I will see you all soon.